I was born into comfort, into education, music, intellect, and safety. From the outside, my life promised influence, not sacrifice. I became a theologian young. I loved ideas, truth, doctrine, the structure of belief. I studied in Berlin, traveled to America, debated with some of the brightest minds of my time. I believed the church existed to speak truth clearly and faithfully. But when Adolf Hitler rose to power, I saw something dangerous happening, not only in the nation, but in the church itself. The church was becoming silent, or worse, obedient. I realized then that theology that costs nothing is not faith. It is convenience. Many Christians told themselves they were being wise. They said the church should avoid politics. They said obedience was a Christian virtue. But I saw pastors swearing allegiance to the Führer. I saw crosses standing beside swastikas. I saw truth being exchanged for safety. I wrote what I believed plainly. When Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die. Not someday, not symbolically, now. A church that refuses to suffer for truth, I believed, has already betrayed Christ. So I helped form the Confessing Church, Christians who refuse to let the state define the gospel. We trained pastors in secret. We spoke when silence was easier. And that is when the cost truly began. I must tell you something difficult. I was a pacifist. I believed deeply in loving one's enemies. I taught that violence corrupts the soul. And yet, I joined a resistance movement that sought to overthrow Hitler. This was not an easy choice. It tore at my conscience. But I came to believe this: not to act is to act. If a madman drives a car into a crowd, it is not enough to bind the wounds of the victims. One must stop the driver. I did not believe myself righteous. I did not believe myself clean. I believed myself responsible. And I placed my life in God's hands, not confident in my moral purity, but in His mercy. Eventually, I was arrested. Prison strips away illusions. Titles mean nothing there. Reputation dissolves. All that remains is who you truly are before God. In my cell, I prayed. I wrote letters. I reflected on a faith that does not rely on comfort or certainty. I began to understand something deeper. God is not a tool for our strength. God meets us in weakness. I wrote that Christ does not save us from suffering. He saves us through it. Faith, I realized, is not clinging to God so He will rescue us. Faith is trusting Him even when He does not, even when the door stays locked, even when the execution date is written. In 1945, just weeks before the war ended, the truth was uncovered. My connection to the resistance was proven. There was no trial worth naming, no real defense. I was taken to Flossenburg concentration camp. At dawn, I was led away. I knelt to pray. Witnesses later said I was calm, strangely so, not because I believed death was easy, but because I believed God was faithful. I was hanged that morning, 39 years old. The war ended shortly after. I do not tell you this story so you will admire me. I tell it so you will ask yourself one question. What does your faith cost you? Not your words, not your opinions, your obedience. Cheap grace, I warned, is grace without discipleship, without the cross, without Jesus Christ. Faith that survives only in comfort is not faith, it is habit. If you follow Christ, you will be called to stand when it is easier to bow, to speak when silence is safer, to love truth more than life itself. This is not despair. This is freedom. For only when we surrender everything do we discover that Christ is enough.